Monumental developments are unfolding in the economic showdown between America and China that the financial media doesn't want you to know about. Over there at the White House, things are happening, and there are, despite public denials from Beijing, actions do speak louder than words as the communist regime quietly prepares emergency measures. What exactly is causing Chinese officials to panic behind closed doors? Why are major American corporations suddenly shifting production away from China? And how has President Trump's strategy forced concessions that economic experts claimed were impossible? The implications extend far beyond trade numbers on a spreadsheet. This represents a fundamental realignment of global economic power that will impact American jobs, national security, and your family's financial future. So don't go anywhere. This revelation changes everything. And while China's economic strength falters under Trump's pressure, many American men are experiencing their own power struggle. Just as Beijing won't publicly admit negotiations, most guys don't realize their testosterone levels are being drained by something unexpected in their diet. This testosterone-killing food isn't junk food or sugar. It's something you've been told is healthy. Yet eating it just a few times a week is enough to wreck your testosterone, drain your energy, and crush your motivation. And men who eliminated this one food are building muscle, feeling energized again, just as American manufacturing is regaining strength after eliminating Chinese dependence. Discover this hidden enemy at sculptnation.com/NNN today. Tap more below this video, and you will find the answer. So we got some bombshell revelations about President Trump's tariff strategy. He is winning. Are you tired of winning yet? China's panicking has already begun. They're suspending their own tariffs on American goods. The communist regime is feeling the Trump pain. China forced to consider exemptions on medical equipment, industrial chemicals, possibly computer chips from their 125% tariffs. Remember when they did that? Retaliation? Yeah, they're backing off. They're desperately trying to save their manufacturing sector as Trump's America First policies hit them where it hurts. Trump is winning, baby. Check this out.
Shocks. Bloomberg understands that China is considering suspending its 125% tariffs on some U.S. imports as the economic costs of the trade war weigh heavily on certain industries. Now, goods being considered for potential exemption include medical equipment and some industrial chemicals. Meanwhile, Beijing is vowing to fully prepare emergency plans to ward against increasing external shocks. Joining us now, Brendan Murray, who coordinates our global trade coverage. So, Brendan, there seems to be a conciliatory tone from the White House, but actually China being much more tentative.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a small but initial sign that China is feeling some of the economic pain. It's listening to its importers, and it sounds like it's about to offer some sort of conciliatory move to the Trump administration that would ease tensions even just a little bit. We have heard China for several weeks now pretty much ignore the U.S. Until yesterday when they said, we will sit down with you, but you have to remove all these this very high unilateral tariff, something that the Trump administration would be unlikely to do in the short term. So they're still at an impasse apparently, but it seems like the progress is moving in the direction of de-escalation.
Brendan, what's the next step of this? Again, if you look at de-escalation, is there a press conference that we should be watching out for? We also understand that China could do a lot more on the economy.
Yeah, I think it's the ball is in Trump's court now. As he said last week, it's in China's court. China has come back and said, here are the conditions that we will that we have for negotiation. So we'll see if President Trump is willing to put his money where his mouth is when he says he'd like these talks to happen, and that's going to take, as China has demanded, a lowering of these tariffs. The economic shock from those are going to hit both Asia and the U.S. In very short order.
Brendan, what do we know about China exempting some U.S. goods from again, tariffs as costs rise? Do we know exactly what they're planning to do on what sectors or what companies?
Well, there's some key products used in Chinese manufacturing, in the manufacturing of plastics. There are and some other more heavy machinery equipment that China's companies need to maintain their production. So there's a long list of potential exemptions that's circulating, but whether those actually get carried out, we'll have to wait and see. But at the moment, it's just a proposal.
Brendan, there's a lot of talk about the White House, if not, regretting the tariffs, actually having second thoughts on how they went about it. Is this something that you're hearing, or is it something that's pushed by the opposition? Yeah,
it's the White House almost 4 weeks ago sort of came out with this reciprocal tariff plan that surprised the markets and economists for how severe it was. This was going to cause a decoupling of the U.S. and Chinese economies, and it was going to hit allies as well.
And Trump is winning. The fake news exposed. China publicly claims no negotiations with America while privately preparing emergency plans to protect against external shocks. Check this out.
President Trump. Well, China is challenging US President Donald Trump to prove he's serious about resolving the trade war between the two countries. Earlier this week, President Trump contradicted his trade secretary, insisting everything's active. When asked if the US is talking to China, a Chinese official rejected the US president's claim, saying no talks are underway, and called on the US to remove all unilateral tariff measures.
At present, there are no economic and trade negotiations between China and the United States. Any claims about the progress of China-US trade negotiations are groundless as trying to catch the wind and have no factual basis.
The official also pointed out China's trade relations with Europe are growing stronger amid rising tensions with Washington.
The Chinese and European technical teams have been maintaining close communication on issues related to EV price commitments, as well as trade and investment cooperation, and have stepped up the consultation process.
Global markets reacted very positively to reports of China backing down. Other countries around the world are sort of rushing towards trying to strike a deal.
Say now that China...
Jenny, good morning. Thanks for joining us. What do we know?
So, as you said, people familiar with the situation and the planning in China are saying now that China is sort of mirroring what the US did earlier this month, which is removing certain items from these huge tariffs that have ramped up on both sides. This would sort of mirror what happened during the first trade war, when China also had exemptions for items sort of as soybeans. This time around, it's, for medical equipment, chemicals that are important for plastics, and we're even hearing potentially for some chips. I think so far we've seen in this trade war, China has really gone toe-to-toe with the US and everything that they've done, but they haven't ever exceeded US actions. So even though they're doing this quietly, it would make sense because it would bring China back in line with where Trump is at after he rolled out some exemptions for electronic products earlier this month.
Yeah, that's the context, isn't it? So you've had some exemptions, some adjustments from the US, now some adjustments from China. The mood music as well, certainly being pushed in Washington, is one of a slightly more constructive stance, even though China says, look, you need to drop all tariffs before we properly engage. Talk us through the market reaction, Jenny, to this news.
Markets reacted very, very positively to it. I think, people are just clinging for any sign that we're going to be inching towards a deal. Other countries around the world are sort of rushing towards trying to strike the first deal with Trump, whereas, the Chinese and the US at the moment can't even seem to agree whether they're even having talks. Trump keeps saying that talks are happening. The Chinese said categorically yesterday that no, they're not. So I think even something as small as sort of a few exemptions for a few products, I think to markets does show that perhaps there is some progress now towards sort of a de-escalation, even if it's...
The Bank of America CEO confirming Trump's economic plan is working despite market volatility.
That's great to be here. Joining us tonight to talk about the economy, trade, tariffs, Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan. Thanks for being here.
That's great to be here again. Good to see you.
All right, let's start 30,000 feet. Where you see the U.S. economy tonight.
Sure. So if you look at what we see in our data, And so one of the things we uniquely have is what consumers are doing, and we can see it. So if you think about April year to date, you look at about a 5% money movement in the economy. $1.4 trillion has moved through those accounts in the economy, 5% more than moved for the last those 4-month period round numbers last year. It's basically held up, and it's basically a little faster in the fourth quarter. So the consumer's still spending. Now, they're telling us that they're worried. They're telling us that they're thinking. So if you go to small businesses, they've got good credit quality, they're making money, but again, they're worried about what happens next. And if you go to larger companies, the same thing. So I think the question would be, the economy is in reasonable shape, but our economists have lowered their growth assumptions by 1% this year, 1.25%, and about 1% off of next year. And basically have put in, 0.5% to 1% growth, which is far different than they had, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and that's largely due to the uncertainty around how the tariffs will break. If it solves quickly, I think the U.S. economy will be fine. If it takes a year, that could be a little interesting.
Yeah, so J.P. Morgan had put the probability of a recession at 60%. You all came out and said the bank doesn't see a recession. Yeah. That was April 15th. Yeah. You're still in that spot, right?
Yeah, our research team, which is the Candace Browning pilot team, they don't see a recession. They don't see the Fed cutting rates this year. They see them cutting starting mid-next year, because they think inflation will be a little sticky, and then the Fed will bring rates down by 100 basis points next year, not this year. And they see the economy slowing a lot, and that's where we've got to be careful. They still see positive growth, but you're going from a 3% growth rate in the third quarter of 24 to under 1% growth rate in this quarter, meaning the second quarter, first quarter, second quarter this year. That's a big slowdown in a big economy.
That's what you said to Liz Clayman at the end of March. You said your people didn't think that interest rates were going to fall. Yeah. And that was a bit surprising because, obviously the president calls on Jerome Powell to cut interest rates all the time. Is it possible that could change before the end of the year?
Well, our team says none. The market says 3. The market said 1, 6 weeks ago. So a lot of this has to do with really the belief of whether the trade will work through. And if it works through, then the fundamental underlying economy is okay. Credit quality is good. Consumers have a lot of money in their accounts. The unemployment rate's very low. And that's going to be the debate. The Fed has to keep that course going down towards 2%, and they don't think they get there till the end of next year.
Joining us tonight.
Small business owners are thrilled about the Made in America policies. Yeah, baby. They want that level playing field. Oh, keep going, man. Made in America sounds so good.
Long term. But what I'm hearing from small businesses is they want that level playing field. They know that this is a short-term situation that is going to be replaced by a much brighter long-term, whether I've been in small businesses that are hardware stores or small manufacturers, they are excited about Made in America. They understand the emergency we were under because we no longer made our own chips, our defense products, medical devices, things like that are life or death, that we need to make sure we're investing in all of that. And that's what's happening right here in New York and across this country. Yeah. And what I'm excited to see is the energy behind it. We're working to bring the skilled workforce to bear because there's so many needs in manufacturing. Manufacturing has really become an extension of technology. We need more of that in this country. It's really exciting. But
another huge win, Apple shifting iPhone production from communist China, Neil Rice, to Indiana. Plans for India, to make most iPhones sold in America by next year. Trump tariffs are already forcing companies to relocate.
Confusion. I don't want to comment on that, but I've spoken to him many times, yeah. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, on the other hand, posted this on X. China and the U.S. are not having any consultation or negotiation on #tariffs. The U.S. should stop creating confusion. We're also learning today that Apple is reportedly shifting production of iPhones for the U.S. market from China to India, aiming for India to make most iPhones sold in the United States by the end of next year. There's progress to report today between South Korea and the United States. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says things are moving faster than expected with that country. We also know he met with the Japanese finance minister yesterday. And this morning, President Trump says that the U.S. is very close to a deal with Japan. As you noted off the top, guys, the president heading to Rome for the Pope's funeral, but it sounds like he has a long list of world leaders to meet. We're told that the list of requests from world leaders to meet with the president was 3 pages, single space, though we don't know exactly who the president has time to meet with.
Bank of America CEO explaining how Trump's policies are national security. Here's more.
been, in his words, on the back end of a lot of deals, taking the short end of the stick for a lot of years.
I think the issue is sort of what's your driving point. If your driving point is manufacturing jobs, then you'd say we lost a lot of manufacturing jobs. In 1970, there were 20-odd million manufacturing jobs. There's 13 million today. But there's twice as many people. We went from 80 million people working in the U.S. to 160 million in that time frame, which means services jobs took over. So it really depends on your viewpoint. If you look at it from manufacturing jobs, if you look at just basic fairness, we have stuff to sell. Other people sell us stuff. Why don't they buy more from us? That's the case in China. So I think each country is a little different, honestly. The USMCA countries were part of an agreement that was negotiated in the first Trump administration. So it's a little hard to say that wasn't a deal that we lived with at the country. So I think it's just making sure, and then there's national security interests. So I think there's very different premises. If you come at it from national security, that's about chips, that's about shipbuilding, that's about that. If you come at it from just fairness and buying, that's more about a China question. The other countries are more imbalanced. If you come about it, let's make sure we get jobs back here, that's a different thing to solve. So I think it really depends on your look through. I think the U.S. has been pretty successful when you put it in the global context. Even since the financial crisis, go back and look, we were going to be outgrown by China, outgrown by Europe. The reality is we're 1.6, 1.7 times the economy size. Those countries haven't moved nearly as much. So it's been successful, and we have a lot of great things in this country we got to make go.
All right, so biggest strength in the economy that you see, biggest weakness that you see?
Oddly enough, it's the same thing. The question is timing. The biggest strength is the U.S. consumer is employed, has money in their accounts, their credit quality is good, and they're spending well. The biggest weakness, not here yet, but could happen, is that changes. And that's really down to business employment. If you saw today, the new claims for unemployment are still very solid, at a level that's below where it was in 19. In 19, the amount of workers were smaller. So I think the real weakness is the question, the real weakness will be if companies really start reducing headcount, laying off people. Right now that hasn't gone on, but that's the worry about not being able to figure out what profit margins are and not being able to plan a future. The second weakness I worry about is business investment. That we predict that to slow dramatically this quarter and next quarter. Therefore, that's why the economy we had it growing almost 2.5%, 6 months ago. We now have it growing 0.5%. That is all really drilled out by business investment in the U.S.
Well, it's fascinating. As a golfer, I watched the Masters. I saw the ad. So now you're in the Masters game there, and golf with us looks like an interesting thing.
Yeah, so what we did is we became a champion sponsor for the Masters this year after having done the Latin American Amateur.
The Trump revolution is transforming America's position on the world stage while elites cry about the short-term disruptions. Real Americans are witnessing the restoration of our economic sovereignty. China is crumbling, manufacturing is returning, and global leaders are rushing to negotiate. So the economic revolution we're uncovering tonight demonstrates the extraordinary effectiveness of President Trump's America First approach to international trade. Well, so-called experts predicted disaster. We're instead witnessing the beginning of a manufacturing renaissance that could reshape our economy for generations. So the question every American should be asking, why did previous administrations allow China to exploit our market for decades? Is this the beginning of a new American economic dominance? And most importantly, how will this shifting global order affect your family's financial future? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Love to hear them. Love to read them. I do read your comments. And while celebrating American economic independence, check out shop.nextnewsnetwork.com for exclusive Next News Network gear. Show the world where you get your real news as China continues to surrender to President Trump's masterful trade strategy.